What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Do you remember your very first D&D game session? I do. And I remember that red box with the fighter facing off against the dragon on the front of it, the Elmore artwork, the wonder of not being bound by whatever the programmers designed my little pixels to do. That was my first D&D experience. And we're going to be talking about the game that I used to have that. BECMI, the other basic D&D. Introduction. The year was 1986. It was late into the summer and I was only one day away from starting kindergarten. The older kid across the street, who had never acknowledged my presence much in the past, asked if I wanted to come over to try a new game with him. Little did I know that first session would lead to years of play in the red, blue, and light blue boxes of the Frank Mincer edition of Dungeons & Dragons, often known as BECMI. From the fall of 1986 until the release of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition, the other kids in the neighborhood and I would make our way to Sean's house to play multiple sessions a week. Each advancement to a new color of box felt very much like a graduation of sorts, and each one introduced us to new aspects of the hobby. But that history is very specific to me. Let's talk about how the Mincer edition came to be. The history of BECMI. Let me give you a brief history of our game. D&D was largely conceptualized by Dave Arneson using Gary Gygax's chainmail rules, but putting a story to them and focusing on small parties of heroes as opposed to full armies. Gygax loved the idea so much that they decided to work together to make the game that would become Dungeons & Dragons. Arneson, according to Empire of Imagination, was notoriously disorganized and inconsistent, while Gygax was an actuarial writer for an insurance company knowing the value of consistency and organization. Arneson would send a box of scribbles and loose paper, and Gygax would try to make that into something that they could use commercially. Arneson was rightfully frustrated that Gary was changing his game, and Gary was rightfully frustrated that Dave wasn't helping enough. The two split very early on, and Gary began developing AD&D, with one likely motive being to cut Dave out of the royalties, because it was a different game after all. They needed a product to teach the game and keep cash coming in while Gary was writing his magnum opus, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Thus came the first basic set. This one was blue and written by a D&D enthusiast, Eric Holmes, a doctor, who basically took the whole original white box and made it into something more playable. It only went to level 3, as then you'd theoretically advance into Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. It did so well as an introductory product that they had Tom Mulvey and David Cook plan an entire line, basic, expert, companion, and master sets. But only the first two of those boxes were made, now referred to as the BX edition and viewed as a complete game, even though future boxes were hinted at in the expert set. Mulvey Cook BX covered character advancement up to level 14 and covered the concept of overland exploration or hex crawling in the expert set, which opened up many opportunities. After Mulvey Cook BX Basic, TSR did another reboot to finish the line and create a better learning experience, focusing more on kids who hadn't played war games their entire lives. This had the full basic expert, companion, masters, and immortal suite of boxes, taking players from levels 1 through 36 and then allowing them to become immortals. There are several differences, many of which I will discuss in this video, but the games are all largely compatible. BX focused on the best levels of gaming and has a reputation for being clean, its legacy being greatly enhanced by the creation of Old School Essentials, which brilliantly reorganized and cleaned up the original BX, while adding clarity without changing rules. BECMI, on the other hand, adds a great deal of discussion and content on domain management, mass warfare titled The War Machine, siege engines, and becoming deities. BECMI, at least when I was originally playing it, was seen as the clear favorite version of BASIC due to its mounds of additional content, at least in the area I'm from. Only more recently, particularly with said release of Old School Essentials and other BX retro clones, did BX become seen as the clearly superior option. Today, I'd like to share the advantages of BECMI Dungeons & Dragons. What's different? There are a number of minor differences, but I will try to cover the most noticeable here. Thieves' skills were stretched out over 36 levels instead of BX's 14, making them less effective at those earlier levels, which is a bit of a shame as thieves were probably already the weakest class option. Levels for the 4 human classes were expanded all the way to 36, and with the Immortal set, or later the Wrath of the Immortal set, additional options for post-level play was added. In later releases, optional rules were added to allow demi-human characters to play past the hard level caps placed upon them earlier. The companion set added options to play as a druid, paladin, knight, or avenger, all being options after name level was reached with a character of the correct base class and alignment combination. The paladin in particular I remember finding to be extremely rewarding, and I can recall questing for my holy avenger. The companion set also added attack ranks to demi-human classes, which allowed them to improve their fighting ability even after their level progression had hit its cap. The companion set added rules that covered the creation and maintenance of domains like castles, keeps, towers, temples, and hideouts, which gave players a reason to keep adventuring. After all, they needed to clear the area to expand their borders, and the treasure they found could be used to improve their fortifications or amenities back at the base. The companion set also added the War Machine, which is a relatively comprehensible mass combat simulator with options to add more complicated play. It does a very serviceable job providing an easy way to create results on the battlefield once you've taken the time to calculate your battle force ratings. Later, I believe in the Masters set, the Siege Machine expanded this concept to simulate castle sieges. The Masters set added the Mystic, which is effectively the AD&D monk BECMified, with it being noted as an NPC class, but optional as PC with DM approval. The Master Set also added a very detailed weapon mastery system, which could be retroactively added to existing campaigns or used from level 1 up. While many feel that this overcomplicated the game, I am of the opinion that it adds some much needed punch to the weapon combat at about the same time that casters start to really overshadow anything the others are doing. I additionally like that the masteries are specific to each individual weapon and provide cool abilities as well as the cold mechanical benefits. In my estimation, this makes the weapons feel special and unique instead of just a die type. The Master Set gave players a path to which they could attain immortality, effectively becoming a deity within the world that they had played in. The path they took could be one of 4 different choices, each focused on a specific style of play. The Immortals set, or later the Wrath of the Immortals, gave the players options to focus the use of their newfound powers on shaping the world, creating new races, or even establishing new planes of existence, if I remember correctly. It's been a minute. Significant releases for BECMI. Aside from the 5 core BECMI boxes, TSR had a pretty robust release schedule which included a number of notable products, aside from the generous offering of expected adventure modules. First and foremost are the Gazetteer series, which covered the different regions of the known world, later renamed Mystara, of which I believe there are 15 official entries. Throughout these books, aside from covering the customs and specifics of each region, new classes, spells, monsters, and magic items would be introduced. Also, I believe it was the Gazetteer series that brought a proper skill system to the BECMI line. While most of the Gazetteer products were individual books, they did have a box set for the warring nations of Alphatia and Theatis in the Dawn of the Emperors. Beyond the Gazetteer, but also fully invested in the BECMI rules, was the Hollow World box set, which had a generous offering of classes, rules, monsters, and spells, as well as maps of the massive Hollow World setting. Since each of the cultures in the Hollow World were to be a representative of a lost culture from the history of the known world, the information therein could also inform the DM and players about the past of the surface Mystara, providing inspiration to those looking for a little history in their sessions. The creature catalogs released for BECMI are some of my favorite D&D bestiaries, probably only overshadowed by the 2nd edition Monster Manual, which in my humble opinion is excellent. But even better than the bestiaries are the creature crucibles, which allow players to take on the roles of proper monsters with all their quirks and powers, but the customizability of a regular player characters. These 4 books gave a great deal of insight into their process and took a lot of effort to ensure that the characters would feel very much like they were playing unique versions of the beasties that they saw in the pages of the creature catalogs or the DM's books of the various BECMI lines. Hey, what were you doing looking at those anyways? These 4 books in particular are going to serve as a major reference point for a future video on this channel, so stay tuned for that one. Perhaps, though, of all the different releases during the BECMI product cycle, none was more impressive or probably underappreciated than the Rules Cyclopedia. This book is a true masterpiece of early D&D, and in my opinion holds up to this day. Long before the fine folks at Necrotic Gnome were tidying up and reorganizing the 2 books of Moldvay Cook D&D, Aaron Alston was doing much the same for the extensive BECMI line. To be sure, a lot of information that I used in prepping for this video was using my own Rules Cyclopedia, as that singular book held the pertinent information from the Basic, Expert, Companion, and Master's books, all in a relatively slim 304 page count. That's all the classes, the monsters, the basic rules, the optional rules, the domain play, the mass combat, the magic items, the rules for creating magic items, the combat maneuvers, a skill system, and a very generous chunk of setting information for Mystara, with maps, all in a single tome that is smaller than the modern player's handbook. The most incredible thing is that it still holds up today, and that it is probably why the original copies are selling for nearly $200 regularly. Honestly, while Gavin Norman's work on Old School Essentials is the platinum standard for layout and editing, the work from the early 90s here in the Rules Cyclopedia still qualifies as the gold standard in my book. It has everything that you need to have a complete decade-long campaign, and also provides some great DM guidance on how to put it all together at the table. What it does really well. BECMI has a number of things that it excels in, most of which it shares with BXD&D. These are fast combat resolution, uniform attribute bonuses, streamlined class rules, and simple stat blocks. Things that it adds beyond that: additional levels, classes, combat options, domain play procedures, mass combat rules, siege rules, rules to become a deity, and excellent weapon mastery rules. Areas that it struggles in: the thief skills are weakened. The rules tend to be spread out over multiple boxes, though this is solved with the Rules Cyclopedia. Race as class is a take it or leave it option. Some people will want to leave it. Likewise, descending armor class might be a turnoff for some as well. The price of the original books is quite high if you don't like POD reprints or PDFs. And lastly, there's no real retro clone for BECMI. There's a lot of BX, not really any that I would consider truly BECMI. Why would you want to play BECMI today? Perhaps you want to be more like that brilliant English berserker fellow, and who could blame you for that? If you want to know more about the BECMI line, the BECMI Berserker is the absolute masterclass level, or perhaps better stated, the immortal level. Other than that, you would maybe want to play BECMI because you enjoy a faster, simpler game of Dungeons & Dragons where players need to make wise decisions with their actions, lest they have their fates placed in the role of a fickle die. BECMI gives you that faster and simpler experience while also giving you enough options to expand the game that you won't find yourself ever running out of things to do. While more modern games often give players the feeling of being near superheroes right out of the gate, they fail to capture the feeling of properly establishing a kingdom of your own, or questing for that holy avenger, or even seeking out that wise old master of the two-handed sword to give you the best opportunity to raise your weapon mastery skill. On the other hand, while the BX clones like Old School Essentials give you that great early game experience with the same fast gameplay as BECMI, they lead into a gameplay cul-de-sac, not out of a failure in design, but because that line was never completed. It was meant to go the places that BECMI went, it just never quite got there. If you're still here, listening to me ramble all this time, I'd guess that BECMI is worth a try at your table, because it is that complete, elegant, and planned out system that so many games don't ever get to be, either through canceled lines or overbloated life cycles. BECMI is that rare game that became exactly what it set out to be, and for that, it is immortalized. Where to start? If you are looking to get into BECMI D&D, you have a few options, and I will start off by suggesting that the Rules Cyclopedia, especially the print-on-demand version that is available from DriveThruRPG, is the best way to play this game. It has absolutely everything that you need and then some, and the price for the POD is only $22.99 for a softcover or $25.99 for a hardcover as of this video. Before I picked up my original copy, I had a hardcover POD, and it was extremely well done in my opinion. You can also currently pick up the PDF of the Rule Cyclopedia for only $5.99, which is an absolute steal. These are sale prices, which I believe may be ending in July. But the regular prices aren't a huge jump either, with the regular priced hardcover being the highest at still less than $30 normally. If you wanted to have a more traditional BECMI experience, the box sets have PDF scans available at only $2.99 during this sale and $5 normal price, giving you PDFs of the entire line of boxes for less than $30. If you are like me and you crave that old dead tree weight, you are going to have to be an eagle-eyed treasure hunter to find these books at a decent price, as copies in good condition fetch premium prices these days. But if you are okay with PDFs or PODs, Drive-Thru has a large number of the old Gazetteer line available for print on demand at very reasonable prices. Hollow World has a print-on-demand version, as does Dawn of the Emperors, though I just picked up a copy of the original Dawn of the Emperors for a little over $50, so it is still in the attainable price range in my opinion. Summary. Over the last couple of years, I have done videos on the biggest competitors to BECMI, being BXD&D and Old School Essentials, both of which are amazing games. I have also done videos on the game system that I originally left BECMI for, that being AD&D 2nd Edition, which I happen to also be playing with my two boys right now. So why do I bring up BECMI D&D so fondly? Well, for one, it is a system that offers certain advantages that aren't fully replicated in any other system I have found. If you're planning on a long-term campaign or a high-level campaign focused upon kingdom management and you don't want to do Birthright, then BECMI is probably my go-to. Likewise, if you have a group that you want to introduce to old school D&D, but AD&D is a little bit too much to bite off up front, BECMI does an excellent job of allowing you to introduce concepts of the rules just a little bit slower while still ending up with a great deal of options to play around with. But beyond all of that, I bring up BECMI D&D because as a game, it was my first love. Oh sure, I had my flings with checkers, chess, and Monopoly before this, but none of those lasted. For 3 glorious years, my young mind was swarmed with the images of orcs, goblins, dragons, and yes, dungeons, occupying my waking as well as dreaming hours. What started all of that and led me to where I am today, speaking to you, was that old Mincer basic set with the glorious red dragon and the dude. Yes, it was a dude per Larry Elmore that drew him, staring it down with naught but a shield and his trusty blade. And for that, I owe this edition of D&D only my fondest of endorsements. That's what I think about BECMI D&D, but I would love to hear what you think. If you haven't joined the conversation over on the Discord channel yet, check the description of the video for your not so exclusive but still very valuable link to a whole host of similarly minded gamers filling the chats with discussion. If you like the video or my other content, please make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, as that is what makes it possible for me to continue to do this kind of content. Thank you for watching, and until next time, this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless.